The cutting season refers to sugarcane.
Yes, the book takes place in southern Louisiana and during the sugarcane harvest. And it strangely enough takes place on a plantation, but in present day in 2009.
And Karen Gray, who had been brought up on this plantation, her mother, an African American cook for the Clancy family, and it was just part of a generation after generation on this. But she prefers the fact that no one knows this and that she has come from where? New Orleans, to be there, having gone to college, to law school for 2 years.
Yeah, I think she has a lot of shame about where she's from, that she's the daughter of a plantation cook. And I think over the course of the book, the hope is that this character kind of makes peace with where she's from.
Yeah. Now, the plantation is one of those that when you're looking at a map and it says historic places to visit, there it is, Bellevue.
Yes, it is based on a real place called Oak Alley Plantation in Vacherie, Louisiana. And I went to a wedding there in 2004 and just had never been to one of these historical tourism sites with, the brochures and the tours of the main house
Yeah.
and the gift shop. I'd never seen anything like it. And
It's,
that's why it was really strange that anyone would choose to have a wedding
yeah,
at a place like this. I mean, I couldn't imagine someone trying to have a wedding at Auschwitz. I
yeah,
mean, it's strange, and I think it's representative of how Americans can sometimes have a confusing relationship
yeah,
with the past. Donovan to me represents that, with every generation we keep getting further and further away
yeah.
from that part of American history. I mean, when I was my daughter's age, my daughter's 5, when I was her age, I had great grandparents who were born into slavery.
Really?
And so we
Yeah,
just keep getting further away from it. And I
yeah,
think some of the younger generations are trying to wrestle with what to make of
yeah,
that legacy. I definitely wanted to make this kind of parallel between slave labor and migrant labor.
yeah,
And for me, it is they're not, it's not a perfect analogy, but what I do see is the same is that you have a group of people who are holding up a nation's economy,
yeah.
but are not being able to participate as full citizens. And so I found that really interesting. And even, when you go to Oak Alley, the real plantation in Louisiana, it is surrounded by a working cane
Yeah,
farm, and the people in the fields now is not black people in the
yeah,
fields, it's Mexicans and migrants from Latin America. And I just found that fascinating, the idea that, like, in some ways we have this great progress, well, in some ways we've now got Barack Obama in the big house, so to speak, the
yeah,
biggest big house of them all. But then now it's like we've just moved the colors around on the board,
yeah,
and now there's another group of people who are not really, in my opinion, getting to participate in as full citizens.
yeah. My friend Attica sets sort of red herrings with the red truck
Yes.
that Karen feels is following her. And then it turns out the red truck is someplace else, along with losing her her cell
Right,
phone.
right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I tried to I mean, that's kind of the genre. I mean, you have
yeah,
to have these moments of keeping people kind of
yeah.
on the edge of their seat.
All
So,
right. What was in a sense, the catalyst for this one?
oh, well, I definitely think it was going to that wedding. It
Yeah,
was, I have to admit that if I had not been invited to walk onto the grounds of a plantation, I never would have done it in my life. I
yeah,
would have just thought, well, I've read about all that stuff in books.
yeah,
That's fine. I don't need to see it because I just find it so offensive. But having gone there, I felt like a kind of tremendous sense of peace. I felt very much like, okay, well, this is where I come from, and I'm okay with
yeah,
that. It kind of washed out any kind of lingering
yeah,
shame I had about the legacy of slavery, my ancestral legacy. Instead, looking at it up close, I felt gratitude for what people had done so that I could live this free
yeah.
life. And I also felt pride. I felt pride
Really?
for, oh God, yeah, I felt
Yeah,
pride for a race of people, for how far we had come, but also pride for my country. Because if
yeah,
you walk and look at some slave cabins, and you also hold in one
yeah,
hand the slave cabins and the legacy of slavery and Barack Obama in the White Hat in the White House, on the other hand, that is, the breadth of that progress is impossible to downplay.
Yeah.
And I felt pride in my country that if we could do that, there might be a lot more that's available to us if we're, if we see it that way. If we see it that way.
That's very interesting. I had thought you would feel anger.
That is the, you know what? That is the one emotion I thought I would feel that I didn't feel. And there's a passage in the book that's like that. When Karen ends up returning to Bellevue, she said she'd never go back there, but she loses everything in Katrina and just kind of walks back into the gates and says that as much as she thought she was going to hate it, she couldn't hate it.
Yeah. There's the other part, too, that in going back, she had a great-great-grandfather, Jason.
Yeah, we won't give any too much away.
No, but well, you don't really resolve it in the sense of when she comes across the old sort of land ownership or Homestead Act. Did he own it? Didn't he own it? And I'm still waiting to find out. All right.
What surrounds the Bellevue plantation is a corporate farming outfit, basically. I mean, they're global, they're across the country, and they have designs on the Louisiana sugarcane industry. And so I was definitely trying to make the point that agriculture is a dirty business, literally and figuratively. And certainly with us, we're doing this from California, and I, live in California. I think we all hear stories in the paper about how poorly some of these workers are treated in the field. And so, you just, that there's a gap that happens between what's going on in the fields and what arrives on your dinner table.
In writing it, did you see differences in your growth in between?
What I felt, growth of my neuroses. I was very nervous writing a second book. I mean, I actually think second book syndrome is a thing. I think it's a genuine thing that happens to writers. And I was very self-conscious about choices because I suddenly understood the malleability of the form, and I realized you could write a book any kind of way, and I wanted to make sure I did it the right way.
I like mysteries. I like being presented with a particular question and trying to solve it. Yeah. I like delving into criminality because and this part is just me, even as just a consumer or reader. Part of that, I think, I've said before that there's a gendered component to it for me, that I think part of me playing with scary stories is trying to play out my worst fears and figure out, could I tell who the bad people are if I'm just walking down the street? And playing it out as a reader and a writer is a way of illuminating a certain kind of sociopathological point of view so that I could spot it in real life in a way. But to answer your question about looking at sociopolitical issues through genre, in this particular genre, I actually think, and I'm not the first person who's said this, that the crime novel is probably where we are in cultural history, one of the greatest spaces to play this stuff out.
What makes a reader angry?
Oh, I've had readers get mad at me. The ending of the cutting season, oh my God. It's people have very strong reactions, pro or negative. In the same room, I've had women argue at book clubs, about the ending. That some people feel strongly that it was the appropriate ending and some people feel enraged, that it isn't the appropriate ending.
That's what you want, though, at a certain point. You want the argument to erupt. Some people think it's exactly the way it should have been. Some people think it's exactly not. Then you've written something that gets to, there's a reaction you made happen.
I think if I were a stronger person, I would see it that way. And I think if people were fighting about things that weren't so racially charged, that, the fear for me about the cutting season is that, I remember calling my sister while I was writing it, because I was trying to say so many things about where I wanted my country to go and what I wanted Barack's election to mean, that I worried that people were going to think I was some kind of Uncle Tom or something. So I remember calling my sister saying, do you think I'm an Uncle Tom? I mean, is this going to piss off black people that I'm saying there's a part of our slave narrative that we would do well to not hold on to so tightly so that we might see what comes next? Is that dangerous to say? And there are people who get, angry that if you let go of history, if we forget where we come from, you're somehow letting white folks get away with stuff. So I was just, I think arguments from readers, for me, for the stuff that I write, because it's racially charged and it's charged around issues you brought up before, is Obama black enough? This is all about communication. And so anytime you try to communicate something that doesn't land, and not that you own people's interpretation of your work. It's their experience. It's their quiet time in their home, in the library, wherever they're reading. And I don't own that, and I don't get to dictate it. But I think we're all doing this to say, for one moment, see me the way I see me. The hope in this shared art form is that there's understanding between two people. And so wherever that doesn't happen, it doesn't always feel that good, because you're trying to, I think with the art, bring people closer. That if something you wrote is misinterpreted or is not received in the spirit in which you intended it, it can get uncomfortable.